Welcome to the Julius Ruschel podcast. This short post about Trump's long game in Canada began as a reply to a post on X by Carl Benjamin from the United Kingdom, where he criticized Trump's belligerence towards Canada and the cold face Trump has shown towards the right-wing cause in every other country, which is helping push voters into the arms of the very same Liberal Party that has caused so much destruction to Canada over the past 10 years. As you can probably guess, I see this a bit differently, as a strategic 3D chess move in Trump's long game to defeat the globalist ideology. But before I unpack this, I'll read Carl Benjamin's post because it mirrors what a lot of conservative voters are saying here in Canada. So Carl writes, "I'll tell you what's happening, but you won't like to hear it. Trump's belligerence towards Canada, along with the cold face his administration has shown to America's allies more broadly, has hurt the right-wing cause in every other country. It has allowed the left to claim the nationalistic position and made their right-wingers seem like either patsies of a hostile foreign power or liars that they don't want the same thing as him. It seems that, despite the Liberals being responsible for literally all of Canada's problems, they're going to win again purely because Trump decided that scaring the Canadians with annexation was a good idea, rather than attacking their Liberal Party as the source of Canada's woes and propping up Poilievre as an alternative. It might not feel that it matters, but it would be better and wiser to have many allies who have leaders who agree with and cooperate with Trump, rather than Trump alone constantly fighting against a divesting left-wing empire. In summary, the Trump administration and the MAGA movement need to learn to moderate and govern, not just conquer. The battle has been won, the war is over, and now they have to win the peace." My reply to Carl from the Canadian perspective is as follows. Hi Carl, Canadian weighing in here. When you say Trump has hurt the right and Poilievre here in Canada, I believe you are misreading what the establishment right represents here. There's a lot more to this story. To begin with, there's very little functional difference anymore between left and right in Canada's establishment parties. To compare it with your UK politics, was Rishi Sunak really all that different from Keir Starmer? That's about as little daylight as can be found between the Canadian Conservatives and the Canadian Liberals here today. In effect, these two parties are merely the liberal and conservative wings of the globalist revolution that is sweeping around the world. Globalist ideology has become a threat not just to America, but all throughout Western civilization, and Trump is pivoting to confront this threat in a kind of anti-globalist counter-revolution. He may have won the election in America, but he can't permanently root out the threat of this globalist ideology inside America as long as that same revolutionary globalist ideology thrives on America's northern doorstep, just as it must be purged from Europe in order to eliminate the threat of the Europeans undermining America to bring the globalist Democrats back into power. Like communism, globalism, also known as militant liberal progressivism, doesn't respect borders. It's on an ideological mission and it's growing fast, and you don't win against such an ideology through appeasement. Trump's election win was merely one battle in a much larger war, and that broader war has not yet been won. In fact, I would argue that Trump's election was just the opening battle in a much larger global war that must be waged both inside and outside America. But establishment right-wing parties everywhere in both Europe and Canada don't share Trump's vision and are indeed every bit as hostile towards Trump's anti-globalist vision of the future as the left is, possibly more so to judge by Poilievre's rabid anti-Trump rhetoric. On everything from mass migration to Ukraine warmongering to free trade to freedom of speech to climate change, these globalist conservatives here in Canada and in Europe are just mirror images of their leftist peers. The flavor differs slightly, but the substance is the same. They all lead to the same destination. You just arrive in globalist hell at different speeds. Look at the damage done by Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson in the UK, by Mark Rutte in the Netherlands, by Angela Merkel in Germany, or by the establishment US Republicans or rhinos like Bush, Cheney, McCain and Romney and so on. To claim that the globalist right, like Canada's Conservatives, are less of a threat or that they would make better allies for Trump's anti-globalist counter-revolution is wrong. But many conservative voters can't see it as they cheer for their team. They are desperately voting for the lesser evil out of fear of another destructive liberal term. It's telling that Poilievre's slam-dunk bid to become the next prime minister evaporated overnight the moment that the Liberals replaced Justin Trudeau. What Pierre Poilievre offered to Canada wasn't an inspiring vision. He was merely the other guy to the current guy. And as soon as the Liberals replaced the current guy with a new guy, Poilievre's entire election appeal evaporated overnight. Consider that in 2015, the Conservatives lost to Justin Trudeau with just 32% of the vote. In 2019, they lost again with 34% of the vote. In 2021, they lost again with 34% of the vote. and now they're polling somewhere between 34 and 39% of the vote, depending on which poll you trust, despite 10 years of devastating Liberal rule. Does that sound like a party with an alternate vision for Canada's future? It's also telling that Mark Carney is essentially stealing most of Pierre Poilievre's platform, which pretty much tells you everything you need to know about how Canada's supposed right wing has evolved to become just another globalist party, just like everywhere else in the EU. The Conservatives have moved so far to the left to chase globalist voters that the Conservatives are arguably to the left of what the Liberal Party was in 2010. If a Conservative Party's platform can be adopted by the globalist left simply by taking a half a step to the right, without ruffling feathers among their own globalist voters, then the Conservatives haven't been defending conservative principles or providing conservative solutions. They're merely offering a slightly more conservative flavor of the globalist revolution. There's no chance that the Liberals would steal Maxime Bernier's conservative platform if he was their chief rival in the polls. Liberal voters would have a conniption. Poilievre's vision of the future has zero overlap with Trump's vision, nor does Poilievre have anything in common with the likes of Argentina's Javier Milei, El Salvador's Nayib Bukele, Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro, the UK's Nigel Farage, Germany's AfD party, or Hungary's Viktor Orban, the other emerging anti-globalist allies in the war against the globalist axis of evil. I don't think Trump has hurt any right-wing party that is truly anti-globalist. Canada's PPC, Germany's AfD, UK's Reform, Bolsonaro's Liberal Party in Brazil, Hungary's Fidesz, etc. Their voters are anti-globalist and not in the least bit bothered by Trump. Quite the opposite, actually. So if, as you say, Trump is damaging right-wing parties, it's only the globalist right-wing that's being hurt, the ones still defending the defunct post-World War II era that has morphed into globalism. These establishment right-wingers urgently need to be purged in the same way that the likes of George W. Bush, Mitt Romney, Liz Cheney, and other establishment neocon pigs needed to be purged from the Republican Party to make way for the rise of the anti-globalist MAGA movement in America. To take on America in 2016, Trump had to begin by winning a civil war inside his own Republican Party. But that civil war inside the conservative establishment hasn't happened yet in most other countries. It still needs to be fought. The globalist conservatives like Poilievre are every bit as much the enemies of freedom as the globalist liberals, possibly more so because they give their electorate a false hope and stand in the way of rising anti-globalist voices. It might genuinely be easier for Trump to pressure the liberals and turn Canada anti-globalist if Carney's liberals win than if Poilievre comes to power. If Carney wins and Trump goes after Carney, right-wing voters in Canada are more likely to rally around Trump as their defense against Carney's globalist authoritarianism. Whereas if Poilievre wins, conservative voters would be likely to rally behind their guy and against Trump as Trump ramps up pressure against a hostile Poilievre-led globalist Canada, which would leave Trump with very few voices of support inside Canada. If Trump wants allies in other countries, and if he wants to prevent Canada from becoming a hostile problem on his northern doorstep, he has to destroy the globalist false friends of conservative voters in those countries, like globalist Poilievre, just as Trump had to win a civil war inside his own Republican Party in 2016 in order to clear the way for MAGA to inherit the conservative banner inside America. For Trump to win the long game on the global chessboard and dismantle the globalist threat, the only way to build a coalition of global allies for Trump's global counter-revolution against the rising axis of globalist powers is to destroy establishment globalist conservative parties in order to bring conservative voters into the anti-globalist fold. Establishment conservatives stand in the way of a united right pivoting to defeat the globalist world order. In a long war against a rising hostile ideology, the battles must be fought in the right order if you want to win the bigger war. Thanks for listening. Before you go, please consider subscribing to my Substack for more great essays and podcasts like this. Until next time, this concludes this episode of the Julius Ruschel podcast.